Okay, Francis Steinberg is a psychologist, an acupuncturist, and a martial artist. I am on dangerous ground. A manager once said that if someone was in emotional pain, Francis could use her psychology. If they were in physical pain, she could use her acupuncture. And if they were being in pain, she could use her martial arts. As if she weren't busy enough, she's now added the string of interactive learning designer to her bow, a skill for which I personally am grateful because it's made my writing come to life in an interactive guide to family therapy. Francis has also created the DSM lentil calendars as when the DSM came out, which is quite interesting, which is in your pack. Most of you also know her because she is the communication coordinator for both NZAFT and WNFAST. You probably received copious amounts of emails from her. Francis produced the ADHD video Getting It Right, created the interactive programs The Power of Once, The Curse of Competence, perhaps based too much on personal experience, Dumped RX, no personal experience, and Making Responsible Decisions About Drinking During Pregnancy, and is the author of the novel The Pocket Messiah and its accompanying storybook Tales from the Pocket Messiah. Together we have read numerous books, including Becoming Dragon and Positive Positioning, which inform her talk today. And if you think you're exhausted listening to all of this, you should try living with it. Her talk today is Conducting the Family Symphony, How Seizing the Baton Makes the Family More Harmonious. So I introduce with great pleasure Maestro Francis Steinberg.
So can everyone stand for a minute, please? Here. Yes, yes. Ready? Yes, yes. One more time. Yes, yes. Here. No, no, no. Ready? No, no, no. One more time.
No, no, no.
Good. Okay. This group right here. Yes, but. Ready? Try it. Yes, but. Right, one more time. Yes, but. And then my friends on the far side. Maybe. Maybe. Good, one more time. Maybe. Good. Everyone ready? Here we go. Conducting the Family Symphony, How Seizing the Baton Makes the Family More Harmonious, a poem. To see if the title works as a metaphor strong and true, we should begin by seeing just what does a conductor do.
To show you what a conductor does, he starts off the orchestra like this.
Comes out as a musician, as a leader, as a very smart human being, and as a very organized, disciplined person. Then comfort to lead people will come immediately.
I think the word conductor is very significant because the idea of a current being actually passed from one sphere to another, from one element to another, is very important and very much part of the conductor's skill.
I think beating time is really the least of a conductor's job, really. And clearly you have to, you're responsible for setting the general pace and the feeling, but it's much more about shaping the sound and getting a certain sound out of it, a certain energy.
The magical moment of conducting, which is you go onto the stage, there's an orchestra sitting, they're all warming up and doing stuff, and I go on the podium, this little office of conductor, or rather a cubicle, an open space cubicle, a low space, and in front of all that noise, you do a very small gesture, something like this, not very prompt, not very sophisticated, this, and suddenly out of the chaos, order.
Now, I had an amazing experience. I was 45 years old. I'd been conducting for 20 years, and I suddenly had a realization. The conductor of an orchestra doesn't make a sound. My picture appears on the front of the CD. But the conductor doesn't make a sound. He depends for his power on his ability to make other people powerful. And that changed everything for me. It was totally life-changing. People in my orchestra came up to me and said, "Ben, what happened?" That's what happened. I realized my job was to awaken possibility in other people.
Oops, there you go. In the 1920s, Richard Strauss wrote 10 rules for conductors to follow. Some were sensible, some were thoughtful, others hard to swallow. Rule number 1 from Strauss. Remember that you are making music not to amuse yourself, but to please your audience. Rule number 4, never look at the trombones. It only encourages them. I must admit there have been some times with certain family members that I've felt the same way. We don't have as much time today to have a similar 10 unfurled. Although in reducing them, I feel a little bit like Mel Brooks in the history of the world.
Lord, I shall give these laws unto thy people. Hear me! Oh, hear me! Oh, pay heed! The Lord Jehovah, has given unto you these 15 commands!
Rule number 1, seize the baton. In days not so long ago, in both the East and West, therapists had the idea that father always knew best. And not just dad, but teachers and the family doctor too. In fact, everyone in authority always knew just what to do. So therapists offered guidance, and then the family went on their way without ever expressing an opinion or really having their say. But nothing ever stays the same, and the world began to turn. Ideas of gender equality in minds began to burn. Philosophers started to emerge from their academic caves and towers, giving voice to postmodern ideas and deconstructing power. The same thing happened in conducting around a similar time. Dictatorial tyrants gave way to a more egalitarian climb.
I am a conductor, and I'm here today to talk to you about trust. My job depends upon it. There has to be between me and the orchestra an unshakable bond of trust, born out of mutual respect, through which we can spin a musical narrative that we all believe in. Now, in the old days, conducting music making was less about trust and more, frankly, about coercion. Up to around about the Second World War, conductors were invariably dictators, these tyrannical figures who would rehearse not just the orchestra as a whole, but individuals within it, within an inch of their lives. And I'm happy to say now that the world's moved on, music's moved on with it, we now have a more democratic view and way of making music, a two-way street. I, as the conductor, have to come to the rehearsal with a cast-iron sense of the outer architecture of that music, within which there is then immense personal freedom for the members of the orchestra to shine.
Unfortunately, as a result of trying to be collaborative and fair, we've abandoned our responsibility and a lot of savoir-faire. We applaud not having answers, as if it's a virtue, not a vice. We've lost our capacity for creating interventions or giving sage advice. We've embraced having conversations and being ever-lentingly curious. But personally, the idea of not knowing makes me a bit furious. So if I go to my plumber or my doctor, I'd actually prefer them to know. I'd actually prefer them to have wisdom, and at the very least, I'd expect them to have the ability to know what's going on. If a practitioner takes a not knowing position with a family, is it because they truly don't know what to do or what to say, which is actually a little bit sad? Or is it that they do know but aren't sharing, which is even more deceptive than the practices they're looking to avoid? Despite a bucket full of good intentions, one problem will always be true, that a practitioner's simple presence will influence the family too. We need to find a balance between dictating and not saying, so we can again take responsibility to keep family issues from replaying. It's time to grasp the baton and seize professional pride of place, and realize that leading is not harmful or a disgrace.
They felt they were taking part in a sort of large-scale change. And this is the secret, to come from within an orchestra, to lead them from inside, rather than dictate from outside.
It's obviously important not to bully or dominate, but authoritative and authoritarian we shouldn't both equate. Our clients need our knowledge, our judgment, and our skill. We can assert our expertise without bending them to our will. And you don't need to share the podium with other professionals by your side. One clear vision and one strong hand keeps the message clarified. There was a piece written by Mark Applebaum, who you'll meet in a minute, that to me is the essence of doing co-therapy. It's called A Piece for 3 Conductors and No Orchestra. Number 2, know the score, even better than the musicians. For a conductor to be effective, they must dissect the piece entire and study every nuance and note if they want the players inspired. The more they understand the score, the more the musicians can excel. A conductor's attention to detail is what allows everyone to do well. As practitioners working with families, we often skip this boring part and think we can replace it with an empty mind and caring heart. But we need to be as meticulous in uncovering structure and issues so that problems can be resolved without continuing fights and tissues. So when a conductor begins a piece, they take the score and they study every single element of it. And we personally recommend doing the same thing in our interactive guide to family therapy and some of our books. We've put together what we call a family therapy outline so that you can dissect every element of the underlying issue, the presenting problem, what's going on with the dynamics of the family. Because if you don't know this, how can you lead them? How can you deal with them? How can you interact with them? It's just really, really important. We also need to know what to do with the information once collected, so the family can be competently advised, empowered, or directed. We need to re-embrace technique, and the most optimal place to start would be to look at the tools you need for your craft and art. And while the flashier ones appeal, use your power of will to show restraint and cherish the humble, basic skill. As the saying goes, you have to walk before you can run. Complexity of skill is only reached by mastering simple ones.
By Beethoven. So here we have this piece of music by Beethoven. And my problem with it is it's boring. I mean, you would... It's Beethoven. How can you say that? No, well, I know. It's very familiar to me. I had to practice it as a kid, and I'm really sick of it. So what I might like to try to do is to change it, to transform it in some ways, to personalize it. So I might take the opening like this idea, and then I might substitute. And then I might improvise on that melody that goes forward from there.
Amazed by people who are working with families who say, oh, I'm just going to fly by the seat of my pants, and I'm just going to be creative, and I'm going to do what I need. The reason that Mark Applebaum could do what he did with that piece is because he had practiced it as a child. You can't get creative with things you don't know. That's just doing something. You need each level of skill in order to excel and then become creative. So you need to study your profession and analyze your art. Examine every skill you use, take each of them apart. So let's sort of look at this. So can someone give me a skill that you use when you work with a family? Just any skill.
Listening.
Listening. Okay, so listening is a skill. What I'd like to know is, what is a skill you use when you're listening? Observing. Fantastic. So what is a skill when you use when you're observing someone?
Paying attention.
Paying attention. So what is a skill you use when you're paying attention?
Look at them.
What?
Looking at them.
Looking at them. Okay, so you've got where I'm going, right? So the idea is, it's not good enough to say, oh, well, I do whatever, the miracle question. What I'd like to know is, what do you need to know to do that? And what do you need to know to do that? And what do you need to do to know that? In all honesty, and he'll get very embarrassed, but Rick Whiteside is actually my model for all of this, because in 22 years of knowing him, I cannot think of a day when he didn't work on dissecting some aspect of his professional art. I mean, seriously, not a day. And we need to look at that. We need to say, okay, I'm going to do this, but what are we really studying? What are we really getting into? How do we really know how to do that? And the more we can take it apart, the more creative we can eventually get. Of course, one skill is not enough to put your house in order. If all you have is the DSM, everything looks like a disorder. You need a range of tools for the complexities of work to ensure that you can meet every circumstance and quirk. But accumulating skills should not be an end unto itself. You need to understand techniques, not gather trophies on a shelf. Before you use a skill, you should know it through and through. How to use it, when it works, in which context, and with who. So in choosing which techniques to use, select those that will succeed. Valuing philosophy over outcome is a foolish choice indeed. A true maestro constantly seeks to refine, but competence is only a start. They also pursue excellence in all aspects of their art. Each conductor knows it's vital to also find your unique voice. Innovation, not replication, is an important choice. While you should deepen and expand your skills and seek excellence in technique, you also need to cultivate a thumbprint quite unique.
The same piece played by 5 outstanding conductors would give you 5 different paintings. They may use the same brushes, and the same paints, and the same canvas, but how they spread the paint and how they present the color is what brings out the differences in the conductors.
So ponder this one question and see if it holds true. How would anyone reading about your work tell it was done by you? We certainly would have no doubt reading a session, even if the therapist's name was not on it, if it was deleted, whether it was being conducted by Satir, Mnuchin, or Whitaker. Right? Those are very unique voices, and we need to look for that in ourselves. We need to acquire these skills, but then look at, who am I? What are my strengths? What can I bring to this? How can I flavor it?